excited to have you with us. I am going to say that our Director of Client Success, Carmen Poff, she is joining us in the chat as well. So Carmen will be the person you'll want to connect with. She'll put her contact information in the chat for us, but she is the person you'll want to connect with if you have questions about working with this team, about services, timelines, and even fees. She can guide you through all of that based on your unique need. So I do have a couple really great people here with me today who are going to talk to us about building your resume and really grabbing onto all of the latest trends, but not just trends, things that we know make a good, strong, standout resume. So first and foremost, let me introduce Allan.
Hi, hello. I'm excited to be back again this session talking about resumes. A little bit about me. I am a career coach and executive resume writer with CollabCareers and soon to be stepping into that lead writer role starting in August. And so, yeah, it's just a pleasure to be here again and to talk about probably, and we can maybe argue about this later, that potentially most key part of your career go bag, the resume.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we also have Jason with us today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Mutzfeld. I am the head career coach and also a resume writer at CollabCareers. And I am here to provide you, all the things you need to know about your resume, but hopefully, who knows, join in the chat. Ask us the questions you have about your resume. People think they know what a resume is. Yeah, well, it's changed a lot. And we're going to talk about what you need in that career go bag. If you want to be prepared, your resume is the place to start.
You bet. You bet. And while you're commenting in the chat, feel free to add in where you're logging in from. What we find is that often people will recognize each other or want to say hello or have an opportunity to connect with someone. So by all means, pop into the chat where you're logging in from. If you have questions as we go, be sure to ask them. We get asked these questions all the time. So we've been compiling questions, but we may not have your unique question. So we want to make sure that we're answering your questions as well. So Allan mentioned a minute ago that the 90-day go or the 30-day go bag challenge. And here at CollabCareers, we created, actually these two gentlemen created the Career Go Bag Challenge, which if you scan this QR code that I have put on the screen here, it will take you to our website and you can download a list of all the things that you need to create that career go bag, that portfolio, if you will, of documents and talents and skills for your interviewing and compensation negotiation that will really help you at a moment's notice be prepared for those impromptu opportunities that maybe you didn't know were coming, but here they are. So you need to be prepared. So again, we're talking about the resumes and building a resume that gets results, right? So again, one of the key points, as Allan pointed out, I don't know, Jason, if you would agree or disagree, but that resume is one of those most crucial components of the go bag, of your preparedness, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally agree. I get no arguments out of me for that one. To me, the resume is, I sell it with my trainees as it's a confidence building document. It is the script. It is how you want the interview to go. It's what you know about yourself. It's what you can do, what you've done, and what you can do for somebody else in the future. It is you in a nutshell. And maybe it's my stage training, but it's a set list. It is the top hits that you're going to play that's going to get the audience engaged. And that's what a resume does. It's key to the interview. It's key to the networking process. It's key to the application process. It is a great document. It's written about you. It's not for you, but it is about you, and it'll help you get that foot in the door.
Absolutely. Allan, I think last time you called it a movie trailer. Was that you who called it a movie trailer?
No, I don't remember us saying that.
Oh, good. I just gave you credit for something brilliant.
Yeah, you take that one. I have called it the visual handshake.
Okay, yeah.
That was it, yes.
Yeah. And so it's an asset. It's a marketing asset. It's not meant to be your diary. And this is a little bit of a foreshadow for the some of the tips that we don't like is later in our session, which is just, it's not a running record of everything you've done, even though it is chronological, right? So I'm foreshadowing that, and we can discuss that more. But ultimately, it's meant to shape perception. It's meant to tell a story. It's a brand. This is, as Jason said, it's who you are and what you can do. And hiring teams need to compare, they need to assess, they need to justify. Sometimes we don't like the game that we're forced to play. We don't have the magic bullet necessarily, but there are plenty of options, and we use a certain guide or framework to put ourselves in the best position and really communicate, dialing in on who I am. And that's probably the only argument I would have with myself about the resume being the key piece, is some of the work that I have to do to get to that point, that confidence document of really being okay with telling others, no, this is who I am, even if that might not work out. But that's the resume piece. It's the leverage point for you.
I agree. And someone did call it the movie trailer to your to your summer smash hit last week. I don't remember who that was. So if that's you and you're on this call, tell us so I can give proper credit. But it really is that sizzle reel, right? What I always remind people is it's not a legal document. This is your marketing piece. This is the piece. We don't want to be untrue on your resume. Never lie on your resume. It will come back to bite you. But we want to be able to really use this document to promote what you've done, what you're proud of, where you've made an impact, the outcomes of your work. And those are some of the things that we were going to dive into today. So let's start talking about, let's just start from the top of the resume and go down, shall we? So Jason, talk to us about having a summary for your resume, and please, for all that is holy, not an objective, but truly a summary in your resume. What is it? What are we looking for? How does it tie in our unique value?
Yeah, exactly. The summary is, think in terms of a good old-fashioned newspaper. And I know this dates me, but newspapers are still a thing. If you look at a sheet of paper, you fold it in half. That is called top of the fold. That first page, the first half of the document, that is top of the fold. That is the most critical part of the resume, because that's where the most time is spent. You look at eye scanning studies, and because resumes are scanned, they are not read deeply at first. They are scanned. They immediately start right at the top. There is the masthead, as I call it, which is your name, your phone number, your LinkedIn profile, your portfolio address, anything like that. That's going to be the same. The summary, that is not, to me, is not the sizzle reel. That is a general unique value proposition. I always write them with about 3 sentences. The first sentence is, this is my unique value. This is what I do in a nutshell. It is that highlight of who you are. It is you in a sentence. And you may think that's really hard to write. Well, that's what we're here for, because we do that all the time. The second sentence is about how you do things. It is, how do you approach life? How do you approach work? What sort of energy do you bring? How do you work with others? And this is where you put in things like, if you are a project management professional, this is where you might put that. And finally, lastly, I always like to sum it up with, this is how I deal with people. This is how I lead people, because everybody leads in my world. I don't believe anyone doesn't lead others. They, at the very least, lead themselves. We always lead ourselves. Whether we lead others formally or informally, that's sort of a choice. But we all work with other people, because life is a group project. I teach, and I hate to use group projects for no other reason. I know my students hate them, but I use them a lot because they are necessary. Experience is built by working with others. And I put that at that last sentence. The summary is that nutshell version of, this is what you're going to read about. This is me. This is my brand.
And it should be, as you pointed out, a unique statement.
Yes.
Right. We want to stay away from, 20 years of marketing experience in XYZ industry, right? We want to really highlight what is truly unique about you. Allan, anything to add there?
No, you're spot on, Jason. I agree with everything. And that's, again, part of that hard work is, who am I? What do I want to communicate? Sometimes the struggle with a client is they want to write towards, which is a good thought, to write to the reader, and that's important, but sometimes it's an overreach on listing those years of experience as if that's going to be the qualifier, as an example. And it really just needs to be honest, confident, and nope, this is who I am. And generally that confidence bleeds through on your resume when somebody reads it. They know this person knows who exactly they are.
And that's
Right.
that's a good point you bring out, Alan. When you list how much experience you have and what a hard worker you are, you're almost saying, in a way, I'm entitled. I'm entitled to this job. I'm entitled to your consideration. No, the way we write summaries, we write them to earn that. We want to make the person read the summary and go, ooh, I want to get to know this person. They seem really cool.
Yeah.
And Michelle, to your point about summaries, don't ever put a summary or not a summary to the objective. Objective statements. I am looking for a job as a blank in blank industry. Do not, under any circumstances in 2025, put that on your resume anymore. It is outdated. It's just passé. So don't do it.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And so let's talk a little bit. Alan, you mentioned the confidence piece. And one of the things that I know I always found when I was writing, and I think still exists as a challenge today for a lot of people, is owning these accomplishments, right? Your resume, as Jason said a minute ago, about you, not for you, for the reader. So we're thinking about building this document, building all of this collateral in a way that speaks to our reader. So we're putting ourselves in someone else's shoes on the opposite side of the desk or the screen to say what matters to them. But it's also about owning what you've accomplished. I think we often hear people say we, right, instead of I, pieces like this. So how do we understand what accomplishments to include, and how do we take ownership of that?
Well, I would go back to what you said earlier and use the word impact. So what impact did you have for the organization, for your team, within the work that you did? And you might think of scope, you might think of speed, and you might think of satisfaction. So scope, maybe it's budgets, management of individuals, some of the higher level duties, and et cetera, that you would have accomplished or that were just part of your job. But then that led to, okay, we needed to get things done. Maybe there were some efficiencies, optimizations, implementations. You met deadlines, you exceeded deadlines. What was the rate, if you're thinking from a formulaic perspective? And then scope, satisfaction. What were the end results? And so I'm thinking about, I might not always have access to ROI. I might not know those numbers. I might have an NDA and I'm not able to share those numbers, but I'm thinking about the impact that I had. And then it comes back to some of the language that I'm going to use. So one of the struggles we have with rising professionals is that confidence barrier to say, I've been a little bit more of an individual contributor, or I've led some teams individually, but then I need to start thinking holistically from maybe a C-level perspective or a senior level perspective. And I need to think about leadership. I need to think about some of the language that goes along with that. I mean, use terms like, and we can break these down in further discussion, but it could be innovated, championed, spearheaded, led, directed, etc., to show that I'm at this next level. And so I tell individuals, we're writing to the level. I'm not just writing to that job title, because that job title can change and be different through companies in the industries. But ultimately, we need to have a little bit of it might be a stretch, maybe 10% stretch, just to say, I've done these types of duties, even if I haven't held the title. So you're really reflecting on accomplishments throughout your career. So the wins document, going back to the wins document, we should be having, I'll be quite honest with you, I'm not very good at that. And so I'm not writing down my wins. I'd probably recommend across every year of your tenure at a particular company or your career, what's one major accomplishment that you should write down? That could be a line or two potentially in a bullet point. And we don't necessarily want to exceed 6 bullet points or accomplishments per role. So that's where we would have to start to trim the fat a little bit and determine what are those highlights. And there's ways to go around that. But ultimately, I'm just really dialing in on the language. So often I hear individuals say, I managed 14 people. There's a lot more that goes into this. 15 people.
Right.
And I worked globally with internal and external shareholders and vendors, or if you communicated with the executive level. And that's things you have to think about. Okay, if I'm a rising leader or executive, and I'm looking for that next senior level position, what do those individuals do that is a little bit more commonplace at that level? And then how have I interacted in those same ways? Maybe it's board presentations or interactions. You want to position with that information versus the last thing I would say is you might have those individual contributors that share, well, I developed this database, 10 years ago. No, unfortunately, that's not in that position for the next level. That would work at certain levels, but what we're trying to accomplish and get you to a next level, we need to think bigger and a larger scope and a leadership scope from a senior level perspective.
I love that. And Allan, you mentioned 10 years ago, which I'm going to toss this to Jason and say, talk to us about how the length of time in a resume. How do I know where to stop? I think we each have phrasing or guidelines we use, and that might be different. Each of us might differ on this a little bit, but walk us through how long this resume should be, and how do I know when to quit talking?
Gotcha. I would say, number one, we talk about resume, we talk about length. Oftentimes we start there. A lot of people used to say, well, I just want a one-page resume. One-page resumes are nice, they're crisp, they're clean, they're usually very dense, unfortunately, because to communicate good information beyond skills, a leader should have a two-page resume at the very minimum. When you get to a third page, there you have to have...
It's getting a little too long, didn't read.
Yeah, it's too long, didn't read. So I always say the third page has to be a disposable page. Those are your presentations, your published articles, your patents, anything that is potentially significant to some audiences, but not to everybody, so you can always omit it. But a standard two-page resume will cover the last 10, at a maximum 15 years of your career. Now, people say, but I've been working since the 90s. Well, here's the thing. We will include things like that. We will have previous positions when I write a resume. Previous positions include, and I will reference them without any dates. Why? Because number one, too long didn't read. Yeah, when they will pay attention to the first position with a lot more detail. Second position less, third position, and by the time they get to the second page, that information has to be there. If the eyes land there during the interview, they want to see data, they want to see metrics, they want to see accomplishments, but they don't necessarily they're not going to read that on first pass, maybe not even second or third pass. That also, the important thing to remember, anything prior to the year 2000, anything prior to 9/11, do not include it on your resume. Now, some people are going to push back on that.
Sure.
And I'm very proud of what I did. Well, we'll create a key accomplishments section, or we will call that out somewhere else in the resume without listing the dates you were at XYZ company in 1995. Why is that? A lot of people, well, for example, an HR junior who's 25 would have been born in the year 2000. They have zero. They will look at that and say, that's before I was born. You will immediately become old in their eyes. And nobody likes
age discrimination is a real thing.
Age discrimination is real, and it's getting younger every year. I hate to say it. You don't want to look old. And the 1900s is the 1900s. I grew up in the 70s, for pity's sake, 70s and 80s. I'm a child of the 70s, but I don't ever put anything like that. I don't want to feel old. You say, well, I want to look seasoned and tenured. You can communicate that without calling attention to your age. Call attention to your achievements, not to your age.
Right. It's very much speaking to those accomplishments that Allan was mentioning, and how you position them for the audience that you're moving to, not necessarily where you've been.
Yes. And the interview should be based around STAR, the situation, task, action, result. This is how interviewers are trained in 2025. It's how you should be interviewed. Tell me about a time when you talk about the situation, you talk about the task, the action, and the result. Your resume, when it's written that way, will do that automatically. You just have to remember what you said.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, gentlemen, one of the questions I know I hear from people, whether we're talking about this mid-level or on up to the C-level executives, is AI. We used to say applicant tracking systems. We used to say ATS.
Yes.
Now we're saying AI, and AI is reading my resume, and AI is scanning LinkedIn, things like that. So how do we make sure that a resume is friendly to the AI or the ATS? And what do we need to know? How is it that you all are helping people get past all of this?
Allan, do you want to take that one first, or?
Sure. I think a couple of things right off the bat are formatting is very important. Those systems are designed, one, to check for keywording, and then to parse information. So there's kind of two things playing at the same time. And ultimately, it's a one-column resume, minimalist, and then sectioned really well. That's going to help it parse. So those dense resumes that Jason mentioned, those do not get through as well. It causes more work for you during that application process if you're filling out a form app, either at a website or on the job board. And then secondly, from an AI perspective, we're matching to the job description initially. So typically, if we could have up to 3 job descriptions that really are ideal in what someone is looking for, that helps us think about some of the lap over terminology that might be in what they are looking for. That should express some of the qualifications, responsibilities, duties, the pain points, and et cetera that we need to tailor towards. So in one of those key accomplishments, if it were older from, let's say, the 1980s, and we wanted to pull it forward because it matches one of the qualifications or desired results on the job description, that's how we match that information. And then that's helping with the keywording. And then throughout, of course, the rest of your professional experience or anything else that would match the level of that particular job. So I would say, Jason, to throw it back to you, it's formatting initially to make sure that it's parsing well, because the output that they get on the back end might be jumbled a little bit. If those sections get rearranged, you'll see bullet points that get associated to other positions. The more time they have to spend, probably the less opportunity. And that has to get to the right bucket initially on the back end in the database for them to even read it. And if they have to do work after that, whoosh, it's probably going out. And we mentioned those stats last week, Jason, where it's about 85% of hiring professionals are spending an average of 7 seconds on a resume. So if we can get the magic right and the concoction right, and it gets it through the AI system, remembering that the resume is meant to be the visual handshake and hopefully lead to the conversation, then it has to match up the visual test also, where they're skimming down on the back end and looking for the pertinent information they're looking for.
Exactly. The formatting is going to be parsed initially by when it gets to the applicant tracking system, which has been around now for well over 20 years. When you network into a job, because the best way to get a job is to network with somebody, a human-to-human connection, they're going to look at your resume. You're going to say, okay, please apply. You're always going to have to go through the HR applicant tracking system. There's nothing wrong with that, number one. Number two, that is not a magic HR robot that is out to prevent you from ever getting a job. People think it's magic. It's not. It's strictly technology. It will parse your resume and break it out into those parts, and we will make sure they're written in such a way that the machine can parse it and say, okay, this is the place they worked, this is the place, this was the title they had, and these are the years. And then it'll fill all that in. And then after it's scanned all that through optical character recognition, OCR, it reads that, puts it into a format it can read. It will then send your nice formatted resume onto a human being. The AI version of this, with the AI wrinkle, is exactly what you said, Allan. It is looking for more data than just a single page. It doesn't want to care. It cares about keywords, but it's going to look at keywords and say, okay, what are the connections here? What makes AI different? AI has been around since 1956. It is machine learning. It is learning from data sets. What you're feeding it is just raw data about you. And it is extrapolating from more than just keywords. It is looking for patterns. It is looking for patterns that can predict future success. And it doesn't make a decision. It leaves the decision up to a human being. But it definitely has to be written in such a way that it talks about your accomplishments. It is a story. It is the through line. It can handle the story. An applicant tracking system doesn't care about story. It doesn't care about brand. All it cares about is keywords. An AI, much like a human being, will read it a lot deeper than a human being, and it will look for patterns and say, oh, okay, they have a track record that will match what you're looking for and make a recommendation, yes or no. Whether the human being follows it or not is totally up to them. The key with a resume is always it's about getting you the interview. The interview is where you get the job.
Right. And I love that. And I want to touch on something you both touched on a second ago, which is your network, right? So we put all of this time and all of this effort into a resume. And what I hear is the number one mistake people make is that now I'm just going to take this resume. I'm going to spend all of my time applying with this resume online to job postings on LinkedIn, Indeed, wherever else you might be looking, company websites, etc. 85% of jobs are found through people we know, not through applying online. And that's a stat that comes directly from LinkedIn, and they own the biggest job board. So I take them at their word. And what I will say is your resume becomes a crucial part of that networking conversation as well, right? Because that resume is something you can share with someone when you're having a coffee with them, things like that. You can send it in advance of a virtual coffee or a virtual networking conversation, all of those things, so that people can start to see what it is you've done, that sort of thing, and they can understand what you're looking for and how it is that they can be helping you. So we're going to be talking in the next couple of weeks about networking as well. So come back for that conversation, but know that having an expertly built resume is what's going to help you with your networking, which is going to get you invited to apply, which is going to get your resume passed on to a hiring manager, even though they haven't posted the position yet for those hidden jobs, things like that. It's not just, and in fact, that's not even the first thing to think about is applying online. It's really about how you disseminate that resume. And a big portion of that is with your network.
Amen to that.
Yeah, amen. That's what I
so, friends, tell me we have just a couple minutes here, but walk me through any big frustrations, red flags. What is the conversation you have over and over again with people and you think if they only knew this, life would be easier for them?
Yeah, I'll go first on that one. The big frustration is I'm not getting any callbacks. I'm not getting any interviews. Something's wrong with my resume.
Okay.
Not necessarily. That is a symptom. Maybe it is your resume. Maybe there's something in there that's throwing a red flag. But don't jump to conclusions and don't automatically discount yourself in any way, shape, or form. But remember, your resume is you. So if it doesn't match you, there could be a disconnect there. Never be afraid to ask a professional for assistance.
Amen.
Yeah, and I'll say it another way. I agree. That was my first thought as well. I said it earlier, that length is one of the challenges with individuals just thinking I want to include everything. They need to know everything. And then in there is somewhere the hook that's going to, I guess, catch the fish necessarily. And that could be as part of it, but we really need to align it. If it's not aligned to the next role, it's noise. And most of the time it's, well, I'm using this resume. I've sent it out to 100. I think the stats are less than 1 per 100. You might get a callback or some response. That doesn't even necessarily lead to a conversation. So I'm on the bandwagon with Jason that it has to be aligned. We use the job description. And then even to go back, as far as submission, if they are on a job board outside of networking in some space, I would say this for DNS, we make sure to provide copies of your finalized resume as part of that process. So there's also a PDF version, which can parse sometimes a little bit easier. And then also a plain text version that other firms may or may not recommend doing. And that's just the raw data, as Jason was indicating. So it's your through line, it's your story, and how well does it match or align with the job description, or even if you're networking and you have to pass it through that HR system, how well is it aligned to the conversation that hopefully you're going to have?
Yeah, if you ever want to see how the applicant tracking system or AI sees your data, take your resume as it exists right now and open it up in Notepad or text editor if you're on a Mac. You will see it as text only. This is what the computer sees. This is how the computer will read it. Some people, thinking they're going to save space, they put their name and their phone number and the email in the header of the document, which doesn't show up in plain text. So suddenly they have a resume that's fantastic with no username or email or phone, which is tragic. Oh, it breaks my heart every time I see one of those.
Right.
But, yeah.
You know, and I'll throw mine in here too. And that is that sometimes we want to sacrifice content for pretty. And we need to make sure the content is really solid and there, right? So we'll have people come to us that want 2-column sort of resumes, as you all mentioned, on a first page, something like that. Those formats they're great for networking, right? We can build you a networking resume that you do hand off as a single page, that sort of thing. But it is not what you want to be submitting to potential employers, because it can't be read internally. And you're often missing things if you don't have the detail of that second page. So any last minute tips, gentlemen? We are right on time. These always go so fast.
Yeah, no, I think you were spot on about it. It's got to be engaging. It's got to be pretty. It's got to have some zing to it. So don't be afraid you're not bragging if it's true. Truth is never bragging. Put it out there though. Don't be humble to the point of discounting yourself automatically.
You bet. You bet. Alan, any last thought?
For me, it's 2 words: edit mercilessly. It's like you feel like you're forgetting parts of your career by not putting it on the resume, but you just have to tell yourself what is most relevant for this particular opportunity that I'm communicating or applying for.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, that is where a great resume writer comes in, because they're not attached to the things that you've done, right? We don't have the personal commitment to that you might from 10 or 20 years ago. So I see Carmen has popped her information in the chat. Once again, if you have questions, if you want to know what it's like to work with us and work with this awesome team here, services, timelines, fees for your unique project, by all means, reach out to Carmen. You can also check our website, which is collabcareers-resumes.com. So great to see you all. And thank you so much for joining me, gentlemen.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle.
Pleasure. Have fun.